In relationships, one of the issues faced when I do counseling is that of separating the individual from the collective or the group. It's a bigger problem than many people think. If you think about it, what causes a lot of problems in relationships? The fact that the person that you're with has different opinions than you, they have different input than you, and they have a different outlook than you do. How many people are objective enough or are willing to put aside their own inadequacies or their own problems with sharing to accept that somebody else's opinions or input is just as valuable as theirs? For the relationships out there that are working, you know what I'm talking about. In order to really truly become a couple or to become, you know, engage in each other's lives, you have to be able to respect the other person's opinions, respect their feelings, and respect their input as well. Relationships where those things do not exist are the relationships that suffer the most. The relationships where you don't take into consideration that your partner, whether male or female, is an individual within the relationship. And instead, you try to treat them as though it's a collective relationship. I mean, yeah, your partnership is great. Our partnership is based on the foundation, like I said earlier, of compromise. But when that person doesn't, one person, I should say, doesn't exhibit the desire to compromise in the relationship, then it makes it kind of uneven. You both are not on the same level. One person has to overcompensate for the other person's inability to compromise. And when there's an inability to compromise, what you're really looking at is control. I have videos on here about control and how you shouldn't, control doesn't have any part of a healthy relationship. But control comes into place when you do not recognize the other person as their own self. You know, when you get into a relationship, it doesn't mean that you have to lose who you are. It doesn't mean that you have to, you know, sacrifice who you are for the other person to be who they are. There are relationships that work like that. I'm not knocking a relationship. There are relationships that absolutely work with one person being okay with the other person, you know, being, you know, taking the lead, being in control, telling them what to do, following their lead. Some relationships work like that, but you have to be aware of truly who you are and what you are comfortable with when you engage in such a relationship. If you're uncomfortable with somebody else taking charge, then that should be determined before you guys become a couple, or in the, you know, in the initiation, the early part of the relationship. You, both of you, should express that, you know, what you're comfortable with and what you're not comfortable with. And that's where expectations come into play. Individualism versus the collective. Here are some of the things that showcase that is not, you don't recognize or respect that person's individualism. Insecurity. Insecurity goes against everything. Insecurity can actually cloud your judgment about the other person. Your fear that you brought to the relationship, whether it is childhood trauma or other trauma, can actually interfere with you seeing the other person as themselves. Instead, you see the other person through the lens of fear. Fear can cloud a lot of stuff. Fear can actually stop you from seeing this person truly as they are. Instead, a lot of your fear is imposed or projected or displaced onto that individual. All of those are coping mechanisms that you may have developed in your childhood or your teenagehood, or, you know, regardless of when the trauma took place, you develop these coping mechanisms and you tend to displace them onto the other person because you don't really see this person as they truly are. Do you know how many times I've met people that they come to me and the other person is not unaware of this person? They totally did not pay attention to their personality or their character or their likes and dislikes as much as they should have. And it's an error, but it's not something that can't be corrected, right? Everything can be corrected, and everything that is learned can be unlearned. Another thing is, like I mentioned, the trauma from your childhood. A lot of times your childhood trauma, if it goes unattended, if it's not addressed, it can spill over. It's that whole concept of the garbage can and putting things into it, and then the lid starts rising because all the stuff that you put into the garbage can starts overflowing. If your trauma is not addressed, then you can tend to, is like a separation occurs between you and the other person, because you're responding to the person based on your trauma, and you're not responding to the person, period. You're responding to things that have triggered you, or things that make you pull back or withhold yourself, or you don't even recognize that this person is who they are, and they're not really, like I say a lot of the times, they're not coming for you. They're not. Another thing is cultural differences. Differences play a big role in relationships. Your ability to accept that the cultural differences that you both experience, first of all, put everything out on the table. Say, you know what, this is where I'm from, this is where you're from, this is my experience, this is how we deal with things, this is how you deal with things. And then find that compromise again, find that middle ground where you guys come together and say, you know what, doesn't matter what our culture was, doesn't matter the differences we have, we're going to make this work for us, but we're not going to ignore those differences, because ignoring the differences is the same as putting off for tomorrow what you can do for today. You should not ignore valuable information in any that is presented to you in any single relationship. If something is presented, it's presented for a reason. Don't ignore it because, hey, it's awkward, don't want to say anything to your partner. No, have the ability and have the directness to address the issue, because addressing issues is important in relationships. Another thing is lack of emotional intelligence. I have a test on here, and I told everyone you should go do the emotional intelligence tests, whether you're in the beginning stages of a relationship, whether you're in a relationship that's dysfunctional, whether you're in a relationship you've been in for a long time. At some point, test your emotional intelligence, see where it is. Understand that, a lot of us tend to go inward to deal with emotions instead of being able to express our emotions. Most people tend to not be emotive. Most people hold on to pain. Most people hold on to their thoughts because they're afraid for some reason to share with their partners, or they're afraid of judgment. If you feel like you're being judged in a relationship, then you have to rethink, because judgment is something that will stop your individualism. It will stop your partner from growing as well. If your partner feels like they cannot express truly their thoughts, their feelings, and everything that I talked about earlier, then that person will die. They will die as surely as weeds are killed with weed killer. You don't want to kill your partner. You want your partner to flourish. You want your partner to grow. You want your partner to be able to express their very innermost thoughts. And this goes both ways. It's a swing door, right? It's not one person, but both of you should be able to express your individual thoughts, feelings, emotions, goals, expectations, and everything else that you're feeling. Individualism in a relationship doesn't need to die so that a relationship can flourish. Individualism in a relationship needs to be celebrated. There are two individuals within the relationship. There's not just one person. Celebrate this, because it is one of the things that if developed correctly and if understood correctly, it can really lend credence to the strength of your relationship and help you have not just a stronger relationship, but a healthier relationship. My name is Ingrid Felton. As always, thank you for coming by today. I hope that I provided some gold nugget for you in your relationship that will help your relationship to grow and develop past the point that is at. If you know to do better, then you do better. Bye.